Hi, everybody. Kevin Harnett, Ryan Hoke with you here. We are keeping a close eye on the weather that we have across the entire viewing area. You can see from our SkyTrack camera what's going on outside. We've got quite a few clouds coming in. Let's jump to it. We've got a lot to talk about. You can see the alert day is still in place. Now, a lot of folks are saying, hey, are we going to have storms? Are we not? We've been asking that same question. We've been poring over the data. This is not a guarantee. And if you were watching at 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, we've sort of constantly today been updating the forecast because we have to have that initiation. And while we thought we had it for a while this afternoon, it all died off. And there are certain reasons in the atmosphere why that happened.
Exactly, because the data that we have, a lot of those models that we show and a lot of the data that we can detect too, some of that is just an estimation. And that estimation isn't always 100% precise right on the dot. So what we have to do as meteorologists is go over that data, figure out what's going to happen, and know when to throw out certain pieces of data like we've been doing today and put them in the garbage and say, nope, that's not what's going to happen. Here's what we think is going to happen. And that's why we're here tonight.
Oh, we still have the severe thunderstorm watch, technically until 11 o'clock. Two things are either going to happen. Not much is going to occur across the watch, or it's going to get extended south for later in the overnight hours. And we'll explain that possibility coming up in just a second. So technically, this includes a good chunk of the viewing area with the exception of the south. Now, here is the lone warning that we have that we've been watching, and this is across the Owensboro area. So it's just outside of our viewing area. Looks like it's going to stay outside of the viewing area. This storm capable of and has produced 2-inch hail. So this was the storm that's, it's been moving across southwest Indiana. This is the velocity. We do have pockets of wind in addition to the potential for hail with that storm. And you can see on that, it's still has up to golf ball size hail in the core of that storm measured by radar, at least.
And that's measured hail at this point. So we'll see what that storm does. But again, most of that staying to our west because the trajectory of these storms out near Evansville and Owensboro are more south than they are east at this point. And that's some good news in the short term for us.
Look at the lightning that's associated with these storms too. Just a tremendous amount of that. Let me take off the lightning and you can see the movement of those storms. Again, for the most part, staying just west of the viewing area. That said, there's still some development trying to develop across the Ohio River. And that's what we're going to have to watch over the course of the next several hours. Are we finished with the storm chance? Did it just completely fizzle? Will we see anything? I still think there's a decent chance overnight that these thunderstorms will develop. Now, the good news is the later we go, the less of a threat of severe weather we will have.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. You want the storms to not form when the sun is up because you don't have as much heat energy. But when the storms form at night, folks are asleep. They may not be paying attention. So that's why we're on here this evening to say, hey, it's an alert day. We want to make sure that you've got a weather radio that's in alert mode and make sure that your phone's not on silent so that you can get those Wave weather app push notifications and warnings on there just in case. Now, I don't think everybody's going to see a storm tonight. A lot of folks are going to get missed, and that's a good thing. It's funny, 3 weeks ago, we would have been like, what are you talking about? But we've actually had a lot of rain and a little too much rain lately in some spots.
Yeah, several folks jumping in. We're going to go through your comments here. Christopher says, hello from French Lick. Hello back at you. We've got Wendy in Litchfield. Appreciate that. Jennifer is watching and says, good evening all, and right back at you. And the question of the night is storms or no storms? And Sean is asking that. That is the question. I'm going to go with storms later and weaker. How's that?
And that's the same here. There won't be as many, so it's not going to be like a clean sweep of storms moving through all of our counties.
Elmira says hi from Salem. Tracy's saying hello.
Hello, Tracy.
And Rhonda jumps in with
Thunder in Claremont. Cloverport. Cloverport.
Okay.
Your comment was covered up.
Now, how interesting is this? And while we have Rhonda's comment up, I'm going to pause the radar. So let's go to now. And let me zoom into this because this is fascinating to me.
We talked about this at 7 o'clock. If you were watching Wave News at 7, there were lightning strikes happening in what appear to be drizzle, light rain showers up in Orange County. And once again, you saw a clover report there from Rhonda. You've got one of those little showers starting to move in right along this boundary. And there's enough lift in the atmosphere to create what's called convection and get those lightning strikes going, even though you may not have heavy rain.
Yeah, not seeing a ton of lightning with it, but there have been. You can see Stevensport. You work your way down the river, you get to Cloverport there. But we have had in this area of light rain, bolts of thunder, bolts of lightning, and consequently the thunder. So I was looking just to scan it to see if indeed I could see any. But that's where the thunder is coming from, Rhonda. So at least now you know that you're not going crazy. It's perhaps drizzling with areas of thunder and even lightning.
And you may be hearing a little bit of that thunder, too, from closer to Owensboro. That could be bouncing back and forth between the cloud deck and the ground and making it a little farther to you.
Mary says hello from Campbellsville. We've got lots of hellos. There's Ada. Lisa's in Louisville. Daryl says hiya.
Lisa's in Lanesville, by the way. Hello, Lisa.
Oh, Lanesville. Sorry.
We've got these computers with size 11 font like 10 feet from us that we have to read. So
looks like Louisville from here, but hello, Lanesville.
This is a vision test.
From Carrollton, we always appreciate the Finneys there. And all the way from Buffalo, Janice. All right, let's see if we have questions. Let's jump to it. And we've got one here coming in. Braden says, do you think Frankfurt or Franklin County will get a tornado watch or a severe thunderstorm watch?
Well, we've already got the severe thunderstorm watch in place, and I'm assuming you mean, like, would there be a warning possibly? And that's possible, but not super likely at this point.
And just to note, Franklin County is not under that watch, and Braden may just be asking.
You're just one north of that.
Yeah, so it could get extended, but my feeling is as the night goes on, the threat of severe weather really diminishes. And you know, if we don't see severe weather out of this before just after midnight, I think we're going to have some rain. Could be heavy rain at times, but it's mainly a rainmaker at this point, as far as I'm concerned. And
it should be noted that there is some flash flooding threat with all of this, just because of how waterlogged the ground has been lately. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, Jessica, I think she's saying along the same lines. Everybody likes to be a meteorologist, and we do too. So I kind of agree. I think it might miss Louisville, at least in the short term. I do think we see more development overnight. Why is that? Because the low-level jet is just now starting to increase. I think when you look at all of the dynamics, and we just sort of poured through all of the model data before we came in here, we are going to note that we're in that right entrance region, left exit region of the jet, and those are areas where we would have low-level convergence, upper-level divergence, yada, yada, yada. Who cares what all that means?
That was heavy.
But the bottom line is it gives us enough lift to generate more thunderstorms. And I think that's what we will start to see, especially as we get closer to the midnight hour.
Essentially, the winds are going to kick up above our heads tonight. And that's enough to sometimes kick up thunderstorms during those overnight periods. When you don't have the sun out, you need the warm, moist air that's going to be piped in. That jet would do it.
You know what they say? Sun's out,
guns out.
Oh, guns out. That's not a weather really. No. Anyway, but that's
sun's out, storms up. I don't know. Oh my God.
All right. There's Garen Janet Hutchins. Am I reading that right? From Corridon. Hello.
Gary and Janet. It's a combined Facebook account. Hello, Gary and Janet.
Jan was asking, where are you all? I see and hear his music. Well,
that may have been just before. That may have been just before we got on the
patience, Jan. Patience. We're here now. All right, from Austin, Indiana. Hello. We're going back and reading all of the beginning comments.
We're getting closer to real time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the comments are real time. I'm just going back to where we were. So there's Bardstown. There's Memphis. I just want to give you all, you took the time to comment. I want to put your comments up, right? And here we go with. Diane, a lot of folks chiming in. Everybody's saying hello to everybody else. So this is kind of what this is about. It's a little meeting. And sometimes we do this. Brian's usually on in the mornings at 9 o'clock hour, 2 o'clock hour in the afternoon. This afternoon it was about 1:45. So we're just jumping in, saying hello. And we appreciate you folks jumping in too. Here's Donna. I know the Fogels down in Bardstown. And we've got a Facebook user from Shively. Appreciate you watching there. Now, good question. Here's Ashley. She said, with the clouds developing, does this lower the tornado threat more? Well, a couple of things. First of all, today's tornado threat has been very low to begin with. In fact, it was really a wind and heavy rain threat that we were watching for. At this point, I still think we have the heavy rain potential at times overnight tonight, just because of the amount of moisture that's in the atmosphere. We just have to have a trigger to get it out. And I think we may see that with the low-level jet. We'll just have to wait and see how that develops. And it literally is an hour-by-hour forecasting that we do. This happens. This isn't rare, by the way. This is just how you forecast weather. Sometimes it's clear hours in advance. Sometimes it's clear days in advance. And sometimes you just have to go hour by hour and make adjustments. And that's sort of what we've been doing all day today.
And the summer can be really tough for this because you've got a lot of moisture in the air. You have a lot of what are called like marginal wind shear days like this. So you've got these ingredients that are just kind of, they're there. But when are they going to come together and actually do something? And that's kind of the situation we're in now.
Yeah. Kathleen says there was lightning in Brandenburg. So again, that's probably the thunder that you guys were hearing over in Cloverport. Judy's saying thank you, and right back at you. Thank you. We appreciate you guys watching. E-Town watching, Grayson County, Henry County, everybody's watching. And here comes another one. I know I ask a lot, but I want to know as much as possible. I want to go to school for this. Well, awesome. And that's the key, Ashley. I was in your shoes about, a long time ago. And we didn't have the internet back then. So the only way I could ask questions was either come visit or make a phone call. And I did that and always wanted to do just this. Ryan was the same way. I remember when he was in grade school and high school and college, and now he's sitting here.
Can you believe I've known you like 15 years now?
It's been a long time.
Wow.
That's what happens. See,
we're all getting old here, folks.
It happens in an instant.
Jeez.
All right. Back to some of your questions. I see Seymour's in the room. Owensboro. All right.
You got storms in your vicinity.
Let's zoom in. This is rare where we get to actually.
Hello, Paula. Paula is who's commenting here. For those folks who may be on Wave Weather Now, our streaming channel, which you can get on the Wave Weather app. You can also get it on wave3.com/live stream. You may not see those comments on the bottom of your screen here, so we'll read them out loud. But if you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, and any other sort of social channels, we'll hear more about those in the future. You'll see those on the bottom of your screen.
All right. So, we'll do our best to read them. But Paula is over in Owensboro. You can see the core of that storm off to your south. Again, we were looking at the velocity on that. Just some strong wind along with that potential for hail.
But nothing's rotating in there. That's the good news there. You see that hail marker right there, the blue indicating nickel-size hail, possibly some quarter in that.
And new warnings coming out.
Yeah, just to the north and west, Henderson, Kentucky now under that. That's going to be just south of Evansville. These storms have been going on here for a couple hours now, and they're just throwing out these clouds over us. That's why it's so cloudy over areas of Louisville and southern Indiana right now. It's all these clouds from way west in Evansville that have inhibited the storm development, at least for now. The overnight development won't be triggered by the sun. This will be a different process, but that's why we didn't get storms earlier in the evening.
So there are really two processes and several, but the two that we're watching today, the thermal dynamics in the afternoon, the heating of the atmosphere, the heating of the surface of the earth, the heating that adds that energy we know. And then we have kinematics, and that's just the stored energy that is released that allows us to work with the wind and other factors in the atmosphere, equations of motion, to develop storms in that fashion. So we have a number of ways. Those are two, how we can develop the thunderstorms across our area, and that's what's going on tonight. Most of them are to our west.
And kinematics can be important during these overnight storm events where the storms try to initiate in the dead of night like this. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, so let's see. We could jump back to a few more of your questions. Sandra's from Radcliffe. Hello. Amber's asking about Fairdale. And again, there's still a question mark, and Leanne's chiming in with the same thing. What about Jefferson County ? So the idea is we're not, the threat of severe weather is pretty limited at this point. And every hour that goes by, the threat of severe weather is getting less and less. Okay. But it doesn't mean we're not going to see a few thunderstorms overnight tonight. Just because they're not on the radar now doesn't mean they're not going to form. Some people think, oh, well, they're not out there. They can't move in. It must be over. No, they can still form. And that's the important part. But will they be severe? it becomes more and more doubtful with every hour that passes.
And that's good that you brought that up, Kevin, because that severe thunderstorm watch was issued a little earlier today. And the Facebook comments were like, where are the storms? Because nothing had really formed yet. And remember, a watch is in anticipation for something. So when you get a watch, there may be 0 storms on the radar, but we're expecting things to start popping off in the next 2 to 4 hours.
All right, here's Teddy saying, watching for rain chances tomorrow, headed to the lake. Wish I was headed to the lake, my favorite place to be. And Teddy, tomorrow's going to be similar to today. Each sort of round of storms that goes through sets out boundaries that the next round will have the potential to develop on. Now, I say all of that potential because it doesn't always happen. This morning, storms moved through, set out a boundary. We clearly identified the boundary, so we knew that if the storms could develop, where that would be. And that was right across southern Indiana, right across the northern parts of our viewing area. So by 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon, we identified the boundary, but the storms had a hard time, mainly and probably because of the suppression of the clouds as they moved in.
Bingo. So you had the highest instability to our west. Those storms went off first, got mature first, and so they kind of took precedent over the area. And that cloud shield is what kind of did us in for the evening version of this. Now, the overnight version, again, that's a different story. More storms possible overnight tonight, independent of what happens earlier today.
Now, there's Lisa saying good evening and thank you for the updates. And right back at you. Karen's in Taylorsville.
Hello, Spencer County.
Yeah, and some folks all thinking of Eastern Kentucky and saying as long as these storms stay away from them. At this point, the greatest potential is going to be just to our west. Now, as they move through tonight, early tomorrow, eventually the rain chances will go up down that way.
Right, and that's unfortunate. They don't need any more rain at this point.
Tree Lucas is asking about this in Salem, Indiana, which you guys had some thunder and lightning up there as well.
Yeah, and at this point, looks like you folks are bundled in with the rest of us. We're going to watch and see what happens during the overnight hours here.
A lot of folks just saying where they're from. We appreciate that. Time frame. Let's see.
Yeah, that's a good
idea. Got that loaded in. So let's just take a look. And again, this is sort of for Louisville. And again, most places are going to be similar to this, but you'll notice that the rain chances are scattered. So this is not a guarantee. Not everybody sees the rain. It's a 30 to 40% chance. That's a 70 to 60% chance you're not going to get it.
That's the optimistic view of it anyway, but we've just updated this, and you can find these numbers in the Wave Weather app for 4 different zones. So just put in your location to the Wave Weather app, and you'll get a customized hour-by-hour storm chance forecast in that hourly tab that I just typed in there about an hour ago. So you'll always get the updated information from us, because when we get our latest thoughts kind of on the map, we put it in there, boom, you have it in the palm of your hand.
Now, Roscoe's saying you can't rewind the stream just yet. Not as we're live, right. But when we shut the stream down, you'll be able to go back and see the beginning. But essentially, we're giving the same update over and over, and that is that the watch is still in place. Every hour that goes by, the threat of severe weather lessens. There could still be a round of storms overnight. It depends on how the low-level jet interacts with what we have sort of developing now.
And flooding may end up being one of our bigger risks overnight based on, what we've had lately, which is pretty wet ground.
Yes. Tracy's saying thank you. Amanda's asking a question. Do you think the severe thunderstorm watch will be extended? Terrified of severe weather, so won't be sleeping until we get the all clear from us.
Understood, yeah.
A lot of people are like that. So don't feel bad about that. But what I will say is I don't think that the watch will be extended. I think once we get past 11 o'clock, the watch expires. And I still think we could hear some thunder overnight, maybe see some lightning. Again, if the low-level jet can interact enough to fire the storms back up. And
if there would be a severe thunderstorm warning or two, it would be just that. It may not merit the watch. It wouldn't be very widespread, this severe weather overnight. And any sort of overnight tornado potential, which I know just gets us all crazy because it's such a traumatic thing. I don't think that's going to be very high at all tonight. And that's some really good news for us here.
And Krista says hello from the Sherman-Minton corner of Louisville, and right back at you. Thank you. Appreciate you tuning in. Campbellsville, same story to the south. There's going to be a few downpours possible, but again, it's all conditional. We just have to wait and see. What's moving through now at least in Louisville, is just a few sprinkles. Out to our west, that's going to move over the same area out there. So flooding becomes the issue, which is why they have the flood warnings in place across southern and southeastern parts of Illinois up against the Indiana border. So over that area, the training of thunderstorms is occurring. Now, Chris is asking, will that happen in Louisville overnight tonight? And again, I don't think so. I think once we wind up kicking in the jet, if that is going to allow these storms to, that's still a question mark. We're still not certain that that's going to be enough to sort of get through the suppression of the cloud cover, the substance that we have ongoing.
Bingo. And the deal is you've got that training going on out there to the west. It's hard to get a second area of training just to magically pop up, 100 miles east of that and affect us. So where that's set up now is going to affect the overnight in many and great ways, at least for the next several hours of it here.
All right, there's Zach saying nothing in Frankfurt, just cloudy, and that's the case pretty much everywhere. I mean, we've got a little bit of rain from Louisville down the Ohio toward Corydon, Brandenburg, and Hardinsburg, but outside of that, most areas are completely dry at this point. All right, so let's jump into the questions, and Rachel says earlier today it was said that Seymour to Madison towards Cincinnati late tonight into 3 a.m., but it seems like it's west of 65 much earlier than predicted. Is there another round after midnight? Again, what's out to our west isn't necessarily what we predict because we're looking at just our viewing area. What we did think earlier this afternoon, it was about 4 o'clock, we started to make some changes to our forecast because we were saying from 9 until 5 a.m. And I said, I think we need to increase that time forward. Let's make it 7. So we increased it 2 hours from 7 o'clock. Now, that was because of the development we saw occurring along that boundary that I pointed out across southern Indiana. As it turns out, the storms that developed out to our west sort of put the kibosh on any further development. And while we had a few downpours and the watch was issued, we've had no severe weather in the viewing area. And here we are. I don't even know what time it is.
It's 9:10. They've got a big clock right there.
And there is a big. I never pay attention to the clocks around here. Just ask the producers.
Kevin Harder to the studio, please. Kevin Harder to the studio.
Oh, it's news time. But the bottom line is we haven't had any severe weather. We thought by 9 o'clock we'd see more development. Hasn't happened. I think it's safe to say that if it happens, it's going to be late tonight at this point.
That's a pretty fair assessment of how this is going so far. Yeah, the trends are just kind of an hour-by-hour thing. So even though we may have said something 6 hours ago, things have evolved, things have changed. And that's why you got to stay close to the Wave Weather app, watch these streams, because we're giving it to you as we get it.
And the thing is, it's like, well, you all don't know what's going to happen. You get it wrong 50% of the time. We heard all that. Listen, here's the deal. Any of the model guidance, and we looked at all the high-resolution models that we have that take us hour by hour, they've all been wrong every hour of the day. Yep. So the model's garbage. You know what we say about data? Garbage in,
garbage out.
Garbage out. So if they can't initialize right, they're wrong. And the problem has been we've had no data. So we're kind of going off of what we're seeing on the radar, waiting for it to catch up with the environment. And that's tough because we don't always get the information we need. You got to realize the atmosphere is complex, one, and it's very dynamic. It's always in motion. So we're always trying to catch up to it, for one. And two, it's deep. It's not just what happens here at the surface. It's what's happening hundreds of thousands of feet above us. So until we can get that data, which isn't freely available without us sending up weather balloons, which we don't do, and neither does the National Weather Service here at Louisville, that data is hard to come by. So what we need to know is, what is the atmosphere doing right now? And we note that by watching the trends. And so we're getting more and more confident in what's going to happen.
The atmosphere has details in it that are so fine that the computer data sometimes doesn't pick up on it until you get a little bit closer to the event, or if something else happens downstream, it goes, oh, I see now. So you have to, as a meteorologist, sniff that out. Much like the cloud cover from those storms in Evansville tonight, that's one of those very fine details, for instance.
Yeah, and it was tough to pick out until it happened. Exactly. And then it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe that's what's causing that. And then you look into the data and you look for other things that could be causing it. And when that's not there, it's like, well, that almost has to be it. We've ruled out everything else. It's kind of like, ooh, did I fracture my arm? Well, let's take an X-ray. Yep. Maybe exactly it is. I can't hardly see it, but maybe it's there. It's very, very similar.
That's a diagnosis. And in that case, we would call that in weather nowcasting. So we're nowcasting.
All right, let's jump into more of your questions. Lisa's asking, watching from Hodgenville, bad weather going to be late tonight. Same story for everybody. I think that every hour that passes, the threat of severe weather is getting lower and lower. This is not a major severe weather event. We're not on because there's severe weather. We're on just saying, hey, here's what's happening. And you'll notice across our area, they've just added Bowling Green to the watch because that's where the storm is going. So they're just sort of giving those folks a heads up that, and you'll notice that Hart County's not in it, Greene, Taylor, nobody else. It's for that cluster diving out of Evansville right toward Bowling Green where they're saying, all right, we're going to extend the watch down there because those folks need to know these storms are on their way.
Let's see, Alicia Cundiff, she says, should I be waking up tonight to check the weather? I had alerts, but I don't rest easy because of what's unknown. And the answer to that is have a couple of ways to get alerted, right? So you can get a NOAA weather radio. They're available at local Kroger stores, some drug stores, big box stores. Just get that thing set up. There's instructions in the box, and that thing will go woo, 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 and wake you up if there's a warning that you need to be woken up for. And of course, the Wave Weather app, as long as your phone's not on silent, that'll wake you up too. So you don't necessarily have to stay up all night long as you have those smoke detectors for storms, the NOAA weather radio and the Wave Weather app on your phone. You got to have both. You got to have that NOAA weather radio because it's got a battery backup.
That's super important. You know, we always say every home should have one. If every home in Eastern Kentucky had a weather radio, the flood alerts would have gone off, maybe sort of woke them up, and things may have been different. So it's so important to be able to get the warning. Now, does that mean the warnings are always far ahead of the actual weather? No, sometimes the weather happens and then the warning comes out. That's the bad news because it depends how fast it happens. And the weather can move fast, but more than not, you'll get the warning ahead of time. And that's why it's so important.
Most of these warnings typically have somewhere between a 5 and 20 minute lead time. And that's a pretty good tool to have in your toolbox to get your family to safety.
Bill says hello from Bernheim Forest. Thank you. Laura Adams coming in. Thank you. We appreciate the compliments. Let's see. We've got Kathy Philpott. Rhineyville.
Down there in Harlan
You want to
County.
take Rhineyville?
Yeah, at this point, you've got a few showers that are trying to move in from the north there, from the Ohio River. So you'll probably see a few showers here, I'd say over the next, 25 to 50 minutes or so. Those will be pretty light. And then as we head towards, say, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, there is a storm chance, but it's not a storm guarantee. You may be one of the ones that are missed, but we need to watch any storm that forms tonight to see if it can get strong and possibly put down some flash flooding.
And there's Sandra from Bardstown. Hello, back at you from Bardstown in Nelson County. I was talking to my parents down there not long ago. How about Ballard High School area? Ooh, try to get specific on us, huh?
Ooh.
Same thing. Everything's the same. I mean, it's impossible. You know, we're having a hard enough time to even deciding if any part of the viewing area is going to see these downpours, much less narrowing it down to a street. So that's impossible for us to know this far in advance. And I know it doesn't seem that far in advance because it's sort of here. But, at this point, again, I say that if we don't start to see development over the Louisville area here within the next few hours, then we're probably not going to see much.
Because this is just light to moderate rain shower activity moving from Brandenburg down toward Fern Creek, getting ready to hit the Snyder there, heading towards, say, Billtown Road, Taylorsville Lake Road, that area. But you look out to the west, and I mean, oh my gosh, this stuff has gone bananas.
There is one thing that all of the data points to, and that is this is the corridor of the most instability.
Easy.
This is where, and it's clear. I mean, that's sort of obvious. I hate to speak. I mean, duh, that's where the storms are. But all of the data points to that's where the storms would fire. Now, over this area, there's also data that's supporting that the boundary is there, and it would only take a trigger to get the storms going. And that's what we're saying is that trigger would need to be the low-level jet kicking in. At this point, it should start to develop. We're not seeing signs of that just yet.
Your scribbles are looking as good as Brian Good's now, by the way. He loves the telestration. This is called telestration.
It's more like this. And I'm like, whoa.
That's like his favorite feature on our weather graphic system here. That's one of mine too. You'll see me draw on TV with it a lot. It's fun.
So that's what's happening. All right.
More comments.
Yeah,
Back to your comments.
and it's so many. What about here? What about this?
It's hard to answer for exact specific counties, towns, locations, intersections, high schools, zip codes, area codes, whatever.
Well, especially when it's this uncertain.
Exactly.
I mean, bottom line is what we know is that since the time we've been on, the severe weather threat is going down, down, down. And the threat for even heavy rain is at this point going down. If we see it, there could be a round move in overnight. Most places aren't going to have any problems out of this.
All right, this is our comments.
Bill Napier.
Oh, this is interesting.
All right, let's see if we can answer the
He
question.
says, can you explain the details of the 1,000-year flood in eastern Kentucky? How did it compare with March of 97 here in Louisville, which some of us who may have lived here back then may remember just the cataclysmic flooding, the worst that we've had since the 1930s here in the city.
Yeah. So, I mean, the details of this were interesting, at least as we see it up to this point.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we've only seen what you all have seen, right? It's the images coming in from our stations out there. I'll have a chance to witness the destruction later this week. And to try to go out and help with some of the groups going, the Salvation Army's headed out. We've got a lot of efforts underway here in Louisville that will be sending relief and have been sending relief to Eastern Kentucky, but they've still been in the rescue mode. Yeah. So as they start their recovery, they're going to need help for a long time. Now, that doesn't answer your question, Bill, but how are the details? How did that come together? Well, first of all, I was here that night working, and it was about 2 a.m. And I sent a message to the newsroom saying, this is unbelievable, because they had picked up about 6 inches of rain within about an hour and a half. I mean, it was a crazy amount of rainfall. The rate was unbelievable. And what happens in the mountainous areas is, of course, the water flows down. Gravity pulls it all the way to the bottom. And in those hollers, that's where we have, and we're going to show this tonight at 11.
Yeah.
But that's where we have where people live. The water's rising. The water, consequently, as it is funneled into a narrow area, has a greater force. And that's what either sweeps things away or pushes things away, whether that's houses, whether that's cars, whether that's roads. And that's what happened. I mean, it was just unbelievable over a fairly large area. So what they're used to in Eastern Kentucky is that you might get some flash flooding. They're not used to 6, 7, 8, and eventually up to 11 inches of rain over a period of time that's now flooded everything around. And the force of water is one of the greatest forces that we even work with. I mean, we think of tornadoes and the winds, we think of lightning and its power. But the fact is, the pressure of water, the power that moving water has, is probably the greatest force we work with.
It is. And, my grandmother was actually asking me this at dinner last night. What makes Eastern Kentucky so different? If we here in Louisville had that roughly foot of rain over a few day period, it would have been a different story than the folks in Eastern Kentucky, because the geography is so different. Those folks live in those very narrow mountain valleys, those hollers, and they fill up like a bowl. It's like filling your cereal bowl with milk in the morning. That water's got to go up. And those folks are living on the sides of those little creeks that go through those hollers, and those creeks turn into rushing rivers in a matter of hours. And that's why these folks didn't have a whole lot of time to react to this, because that water that's coming off of the mountainsides into the valley, that stuff's collecting at an incredible rate.
Yeah, the problem too is, first of all, it floods them. That's bad enough, because if you're not, and it was in the middle of the night, so if you didn't have a way to get the alert, which they had issued flood emergencies, yes. So that would have got your attention. But one thing to get flooded, it's a whole nother thing when you're putting in the rushing water and the speed behind that, because there's no stopping that. It becomes like a mudslide that's really just water and debris that's being flooded at you.
And then one other thing too is, like, what do you do? Where do you go in that situation, right? We always say go to high ground when a flash flood watch or flash flood warning is issued for your area. But in those hollers, those are some steep cliff sides. It's hard to get to higher ground high enough to escape that flooding, and people were camped out on their roofs because that was all that's left of their house. It just, the imagery was incredible. It was awful.
Jennifer says, bring back that spinning wheel.
Oh my gosh, that's ancient history.
Maybe we
now.
should. That
Wow.
sounds fun. I'm always up for a little game show.
We called it the emoji wheel. This was
That's
from
right.
like 5 years ago.
That was a fun thing. We'd give away prizes. We'll bring something back. We've got some T-shirts we want to give away.
We want to bring some positivity to you folks at home here. The weather's not always, kind of a down thing.
No.
But, we're serious when we have to be, but we like to have fun when we can.
Daniel wants to know, what do you think Shelbyville will be like a little later on? We'll be at the lake. So everybody's going to the lake. What's up with this? I mean, it's
Why
like
weren't we invited?
the third person. I'm headed to the lake. Last check, it's just Monday. Everybody's going to the lake on I mean, I used to go on like Friday, but all right, let's get the weekend started. All right, Daniel, same story. There could be a few downpours, but right now all is clear. I'd say it's a 30% chance. That's a very low chance. So would not cancel my lake plans. How's that? Just be prepared if overnight we hear some, thunder, see the lightning, but I don't think we have severe weather to worry about overnight.
Kelly's asking about, can we show a future radar?
I could show it to you, Kelly, but I can assure you it's wrong.
And that's why I wanted to discuss that, because this future radar is very much like all the data that we look at, and we see a bunch of different types of future radar, essentially. And we have to go, okay, well, why is this one wrong? Why does this one not have the what are called initial conditions correct? Does this one see what's going on properly? Does this make sense? There's all these questions we have to ask when we look at this data. And we'll show it on TV because it's requested by viewers, but we'll also explain why we agree or disagree with it and what the strengths and the weaknesses of that data are. With all that out of the way, here comes the future radar. And Kevin's going to pop it back here just a little bit so we can see exactly what it thinks will happen. Again, this is not gospel. This is what one computer model thinks may happen over.
So first of all, call your attention to the time. This is at 10 o'clock, so 35 minutes away from now. You'll notice that there's no storms south of Owensboro. There's no storms near Litchfield. But if you look at the radar, there are.
That's the problem.
Automatically, garbage in.
Bad.
It did not initialize good, and it doesn't know. So it keeps us dry overnight, but it does bring a cluster of storms in around 4 o'clock. Now, again, is there any merit to that? So we have to answer that question. And to do that, what we have done is look back at all of the data. We're looking for consistency in the model runs, and we're looking at the initialization of the models. So two things point to that there could be storms overnight. Would they be severe? Most likely not. But there still could be a round of storms to go if the low-level jet can kick in, and because the models have consistently pointed to a round of storms moving in at some point between midnight and 5 a.m. And this one still shows that.
So how do we express what we think is going to happen? Typically, you would see those percentage rain chances hour by hour. And notice none of those are at 100% right now. If you go to the Wave Weather app, or if you watch on TV here, if you watched, or if you saw that one Futurecast run through that we just showed you, you'd think, oh, 100% chance of rain. But no, because our confidence is not high at all on that particular piece of data bearing any sort of fruit for us overnight, because it's not seeing what's going on right now, which is this big old complex of storms from basically Owensboro to Evansville on up toward Illinois. And if it's not seeing that, then obviously it doesn't know how that's going to play into our storm chance overnight here locally. So a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, and I know that's frustrating, and I know that's not like just a cut and clear, is it going to rain or not? But that's the limit of the science right now.
Yeah. And, for those that are just jumped in, and then several folks have gone, but I'll just say that the chances are fairly low, 30 to 40% chance for a shower or thunderstorm overnight. That's about it. Now, we'll increase that as we see the data come in. Hopefully we can get it to where it's initializing well.
That's a problem.
And we can point that out. So let's see, we'll take that off. And Joseph on the river, sleeping with one eye open, but still a great night to be sleeping on the boat. Any night on the boat. Now, see, I was sort of poking fun at everybody going to the lake, but Joseph's always on the river here. So a great friend to our team, and we appreciate his river knowledge. You can see that the warnings continue along that zone as well. We were pointing out that, these are just off to the east of, Sacramento, but
Yes, it's all north of the Western Kentucky Parkway
pretty
to get
much
your bearings
south
here.
of Owensboro and just west of our viewing area, which would be Grayson County. Grayson County is not going to get hit by this. It looks like it stays just west. It's going to move pretty much right along 165.
That's that new interstate that they built from Owensboro all the way down to southern Kentucky there.
Beaver Dam.
Yeah.
Get hit hard with, that's a good storm. Now that storm is a tremendous amount of lightning with it. Let me stop it here.
Yeah, we've turned off the lightning so you can see the storm. That's been kind of a problem tonight, is the lightning strikes covering up the storms.
So there's the lightning within that storm. You can see plenty of lightning, likely some hail with that storm. You can see that little hail core.
Yep.
That warning goes until 8:45. We look at the wind inside that storm with velocity, a nice push of wind on the leading edge of that. So that's where we have the strongest winds within that storm as well. So that's what we're watching as it moves off to the, that's moving off to the south and southeast, probably about 35-40 miles an hour.
Somewhere around there. And these storms, because they're moving south, likely won't even clip our counties in the near term here, it looks like.
All right, back to your comments. Maureen is saying, thanks for the updates from McDaniels. Again, another area close to the lake.
If you mention lake, river,
Taylorsville, another lake. I love
Kevin will talk about it.
Yeah, I'm pushing on all of the comments that I can get to.
I used to live off of Taylorsville Lake Road. You'd see all the boats, all those little pontoon boats going to the lake.
Ski boats.
Those are fun.
Sky's darkening over in Breckenridge County, I see.
Yeah, it's all that rain shower activity that's moving through that's not severe, and it's not even a thunderstorm, except for a couple of bolts of lightning here and there that you might see.
Yeah. And let's see. Let's try to help out the Hernandez family here. Is Crestwood going to get a huge part of the storm? Have a son with autism, so just trying to prepare. First of all the autistic kids that I've met love weather, which I find fascinating because they can recall in so many instances the past dates, and I just find that fascinating. I don't know your son's name, or yes, your son's name, but tell him hello from us if he's not watching. And let us just say that, again, Crestwood's not seen a thing all evening. I'll zoom the radar out, and then you can see your location is up here close to LaGrange. And for the most part, it's about a 30% chance for seeing a shower or thunderstorm across Oldham County.
And just to reiterate, that yellow that you see on the map right there, that yellow shading from Bowling Green up to Frankfurt, to north of Frankfurt and beyond to Cincinnati, that's a severe thunderstorm watch that goes until 11 o'clock Eastern time this evening. We will see if they keep that. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. I think the National Weather Service is kind of in the same boat we are, going, all right, how's this going to unfold here? So they're looking over the data we're looking over.
Because the data's the garbage.
Yeah.
And it's just not been helpful.
Yeah. And it's, some folks will say, all right, well, then look at different data, or, use your education. We are. And here's the deal. The computer models allow us to see hour by hour snippets of what's going to happen. And that's really tough for a human to do, because you would need probably an entire room full of calculations and equations on a wall to do that yourself. So unfortunately, we do need to lean on that data, but we also have our education, our meteorological knowledge to know when to say, we shouldn't be using this data, or, hey, I can see on the radar, this is happening. This is what should happen over the next several hours. And that's what we're doing now, is that nowcasting up. We see what's on the radar. We know the trends. We know the kind of the preceding conditions, what happened earlier today. A lot of stuff that we can put into our heads and spit out a pretty good forecast too.
I was just putting on the clouds. I wanted to see where that.
That cloud shield that expands basically from that line of storms, near Evansville, Owensboro, and on north. And then that cloud shield kept getting blown to the east. So Kevin and I were looking at the radar earlier this evening, and what we were seeing were these thunderstorm cells, especially ones up near North Vernon and Seymour, trying to pop off. They were trying to grow in height, and then they'd collapse. And it was because that cloud shield, that gray shade you see there, was overspreading on top of these developing storms. It's subsiding air. It's air that's kind of moving downward instead of upward, and it would just smash the storms. So you didn't have any environment for those storms to actually develop in that was conducive for severe weather or a storm to begin with.
So here's the example of that. You can watch that storm near Jasper. And as we see that storm trying to develop. And again, the time on this was about 6:30. The storm's trying to develop. It had gone up pretty quickly. And then the clouds from the storms, even west of that, closer to the Indiana-Illinois border, were blowing in. And as that happened, you can see the clouds take over that storm.
And boom,
And the storm
look at that.
is now fading. So there wasn't enough there. We had downward motion instead of upward motion in the atmosphere there. And downward motion kills storms. We have to have upward motion to have the longevity of these storms to survive, because when we lift the air or the air rises, it condenses. And that's what we have to keep that cycle going.
Yeah, that was something I learned very young. One of the first things about storm chasing way back when was, if you've got a cloud shield, a shield of clouds over top of you, like a thin cirrus shield, the storms that try to develop underneath that just aren't going to do much. They're probably not going to be severe or even survive. So whenever you see those big cloud shields, it's kind of like a woo for our eye to gravitate toward that and figure out what's going to happen with that cloud shield.
All right. Before we go, and I'm going to jump off here because we're going to have to prepare an update for the 11, and we do have some new data coming in, and we want to look at that. I want to share with you the 10-day here, and I'll just point out that we do have still another chance of showers and thunderstorms tomorrow, both early and then possibly again later in the day. And then it's dry but hot on Wednesday, and then we're going to see a pretty hot, this is normal, upper 80s, near 90, so nothing abnormal with scattered thunderstorms. Scattered being the key word there. Not everybody's seeing those. So that is what we're looking at.
Yeah, Wednesday will be the worst day of the heat, and the heat index value could push north of 100 degrees for a few hours for a few locations in the afternoon. But, these highs aren't as bad as what we've seen so far this summer. We've hit 100 degrees a couple times. Whew.
Yeah, it's been a fairly hot summer. We'll share some of those stats at 11 o'clock. We'll talk about the hollers in eastern Kentucky and how that sort of aided in the flooding at 11 o'clock. And of course, we'll have the latest on what we expect overnight on Wave News at 11 o'clock. So be sure to tune in. I'll have the updated forecast. I'm going to go work on that for the next hour and a half, and I'll see you at 11 o'clock. In the meantime, I hope you have a good night.
We'll see you, everybody.